Hello everyone, my name is Mark Bright. I'm a graphic designer by profession and a teacher. What I do on my channel is to answer Cambridge A-level IT questions about graphic creation, animation and web programming. Once in a while, I do chip in professional tutorials on Photoshop for those who want to learn something more advanced. And in this tutorial, we are going to create this advertising design for a watermelon promo. So sit back and enjoy the video. If you feel I'm going too fast, you can always pause and replay. So let's head into Photoshop and begin. So I'm first going to create an artboard with the dimensions you see on the screen. And for the background layer, let's go ahead and create a solid color adjustment layer. Now I'm going to select a darker shade of green. And let's create another layer on top of this one. Pick our brush tool. Increase the size using the square bracket, the right square bracket. And make sure there's no hardness. Now from the color, we pick light pink. Click OK. Now let's go ahead and click on the middle section a couple of times. Now we're going to change this color. We're going to give it an overlay. So I'm going to use a function button here and select color overlay. And we're going to select something light greenish yellow. You can write the code down if you need it and click OK. And we can group all the layers we've selected and rename it background. Now I think our artboard is not wide enough, so I'm going to adjust the canvas by holding down Ctrl Alt and pressing C. With the anchor point in the middle, I'm going to increase the width to say 2800 and click OK. Now we need to go into the background and make changes to layer 1 by pressing Ctrl T, and then we increase the size to fit our new canvas. We can now bring in our watermelon by going to File and clicking on Place Embedded. Select the watermelon fruit, place. Click on the check sign, and we want to convert this to an actual layer. Let's go to Layer, Rasterize, Rasterize Smart Object. Now press Ctrl and J to duplicate. And with the layer on top selected, let's go into Properties and click on Select Subject. Let's hold down Ctrl Shift and press I for an inverted selection and hit the delete button. Now if I take out the duplicate under it, we should have our watermelon with a transparent background. Press Ctrl D to switch off the matching ants, and let's go ahead and unhide the original image. Now we're going to need the shadow at the base of the watermelon. So I'll pick my lasso tool and select that region. With the layer still selected, let's click on Layer Mask. And in the blending mode, we change it to multiply. Now we're going to split our watermelon into two halves. But before we do that, let's rename our layers. We can rename this to watermelon shadow. And let's make a duplicate of this. Ctrl J. And rename this to bottom. And this one top. Now let's go ahead and select the bottom layer. Select the rectangular marquee tool. And let's come halfway, somewhere around here, and select our bottom part of the watermelon. I'm going to move it down a bit like this. And with the bottom layer still selected, let's click on layer mask. Now if I hide the top layer, we should have our bottom part. Now to select the opposite side, all we need to do is hold down Ctrl while we click on the bottom layer mask once to bring up our selection. Now press or hold Shift Ctrl and press I for an inverse selection. And select the top layer and press layer mask. Now if I hide the bottom layer, we should be left with our top. So now that we've successfully split our watermelon into two halves, we can group the bottom layer with the shadow and call it W bottom for watermelon bottom. Can even add color to distinguish everything that comes within this group. Now we need to resize our watermelon, so let's hold down Ctrl whilst we select both the top and the bottom layers. Press Ctrl T to transform and reduce the size to something like this. Bring it to the middle part of our canvas. Increase the size a little and hit the check sign. Now let's select the top part only and move it upwards like this. Hit the Ctrl T once again and then we rotate it to our left a bit. Bring it further to your left, something like this. And let's hit the check sign once again. Now let's bring in our watermelon slice from the assets. And go ahead and rasterize the layer. Now let's pick the magic wand tool to simply remove the background. Hit Ctrl and D to deactivate the matching ants. And hit Ctrl T to resize. Something like this is fine. When you hit the check button, we realize we have this straight line here So you can simply pick the eraser tool and take that off. Now I'm going to create a duplicate of this. Control J. So we have one for the top and one for the bottom. Select the bottom half and let's convert this once again to a smart layer. Now let's go to Edit, Transform, and look for Distort. And let's make it as flat as possible. It should still give us that three-dimensional effect. I'm going to zoom in on the edges to ensure the corners blend in well. Let's hit the check sign first. And when we zoom in further, this needs to go away. So I'm going to just use the arrow keys to reposition. Hit Control T and bring this inward. You can do the same thing for the opposite side. That one looks a bit better. Let's hit Control 0. And let's repeat the process for the top part. To get this done easily, let's first hide our top slice. Select the top layer. Hit Ctrl T to transform. And let's rotate it back so that it aligns horizontally. And let's pick our rectangular marquee tool to make a selection like this on the top half. Now I'm going to pick the eraser tool and wipe off that area so that we reduce the size a bit. Hit Ctrl D to switch off the matching ants. And let's bring back the copy of our slice. Place it on top of our top half. Press Ctrl and T to transform. Hold down Shift whilst you bring down the top part this way. And place it on the top half of the watermelon. We can zoom in to make sure the edges are okay. We don't want some of the corners sticking out. And hit the check sign. You can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move it in further like this. And let's hit Ctrl 0. And I think that's fine. We can now rename our layers so that we can group them. This is the top slice, so let's say top slice. There's another one here. We can name this down slice or bottom slice. And let's drop down our bottom group and place the down slice inside on top of all of them. Now we can select our top assets. Hit Ctrl T to transform. rotate them a bit to our left and move it back to this position. And then let's hit the check sign. So let's turn our attention to the product in the design, which is the bottle. So I have my bottle in my assets here, which I downloaded from the internet. One very important thing you should take note of when downloading images from the internet is to make sure the image of the product you want to advertise is of high definition. In so doing, it makes your advertising design stand out. So with what we have here, I'm going to isolate the bottle with the red juice. So I'll pick my crop tool and then just take out all the other bottles. And I'm going to remove the background. I can either use remove background here, or I'll use the magic wand tool and just delete the background. I'll now introduce the label that we need to place on the bottle. That I also downloaded from the internet. And let me resize. Let's resize it. Now you notice there's a reflection on the bottle, which we need to make sure blends with our logo. So I'm going to go into the blending mode and change this to multiply. When you do that, it blends perfectly, but realize that portions of our label as well is diminished. So what I'm going to do is duplicate the label, and the one on top, I'm going to change the blending mode to screen. When you do that, realize that the reflection sort of blends with the top part of the logo. Now I'm going to add a layer mask. Pick the brush tool and then darken this side a bit so that we have the impression that the light is coming from the left. Do it once, twice. I think this is okay. Now we can group all the elements, make a duplicate, and press Ctrl E to merge, and then hide the other one. So now we have a merged bottle with its label. So let's go ahead and move our merged bottle layer to our main project. Now let's go ahead and hide the bottle and introduce our next asset, which is the splash. The main objective is to take out the strawberry and replace it with the bottle. So I'm first going to change this to a normal layer since it's a smart object. So I'll begin by taking the lasso tool and try to select all the strawberry we have, except for the one that's already in the splash, and just hit the delete button. So with the strawberry that is already in the splash, we are not going to take it out entirely, but what we'll do is try to separate the front part of the splash from the back, and then we will place our bottle in between. So I'm going to zoom in on the area and pick my pen tool, or press P for the pen tool, and I'll start by selecting the front part of my splash. So with my front part or front portion selected, I'll go to edit, copy, go to edit once again, paste special, and say paste in place. So when you come to the layers panel, we have a portion which represents the front part, and then we have a portion which represents the entire splash. So I'm going to unhide my bottle and move the layer in between the front and the back. So let's rename the bottle layer. Now with my move tool, if I decide to move the bottle, you realize that it's now in between or within the splash. Can hit Ctrl T to resize it, and since it's the focal point of our design, we need to make sure it stays in focus. So I'll rotate it a bit, so something like this. Then we hit the check sign. You can select all three layers and group them, hit Ctrl T and resize all of them, and place them sort of on our watermelon like this, and hit the check sign once again. Now let's hide the group and do something quickly to the slice that we have down here. Let's try and change the angle to flatten it a bit. So just hit Ctrl T and hold down Shift whilst you pull up one of the horizontal handles like this, and use the move tool to bring it downwards back to the watermelon. Hit the check sign if you're cool. So we have a more flattened version. This is just for it to be able to accommodate the splash. So I'm going to unhide the splash. And with my move tool, I'm going to place it such that this area and this side that is sort of curved in will blend with the floor, or it will blend with this area of the watermelon. So let me bring it down again like this. And with the entire group still selected, I'll hit Ctrl T to try and increase the size a little bit. So our focal point is this area and this side. Can hit the check sign. Go into the group. We can even increase the size of the product. So we have something like this. And still with our product selected, let's add a layer mask. And pick a brush tool, and let's ensure that the hardness is on 0 and the size is around 400 pixels. And then we use that to brush around the edges of our splash. So we keep doing that till we have the bottom edge of our watermelon inside. Now let's change the canvas size. Hold down Ctrl Alt and press C, and change the height to say 3200 pixels. Or let's make it 3500. Press Ctrl and 0. And let's go into our background, into our background group, and look for the layer. layer 1. In fact, let's rename it. Can rename it as gradient or brush. Press Ctrl T to transform and hold Shift whilst you resize it at the top and the bottom. Hit the check sign for it to accept. And the next asset we are going to add is the watermelon slices. But first, let's go into our layers panel and rename some of the groups we've created. This group 1 holds the bottle, so I can name this bottle group. So that is what we have for now. I think this is the top part of the watermelon. So we name that W top. So we should have 4 groups now. So let's go ahead and add our asset. Hit the check sign to accept, and then we are going to select about 4 different slices from here. So let's first make a copy of our watermelon slices by hitting Ctrl J. So we hide one, and the other one we go into layers, look for rasterize and smart object. Now you go ahead and pick our object selection tool and select the various slices we want to use. Now let's go ahead and name all the slices accordingly. I would like to add a shadow part of slice 4. So I'm going to zoom in on that slice, this one, and pick my lasso tool and make a selection around the shadow region. And with the matching ants active, let's make sure our main assets layer is selected. Now press Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl Shift V to paste in place. Now we can hide our main watermelon slice asset. So we have this shadow aspect beneath our slice 4. So all we need to do is to go into the blending options and change it to multiply. But when we zoom in, we still have this obvious line showing here. And to resolve this issue, I'm going to use a brush tool with a hardness of 0. And then I'm going to add a layer mask. Now with my foreground color black, I'll just brush over the area just to hide or take care of that obvious line or the obvious outline. Has to look as natural as possible. When we are done, hit Ctrl and 0 to zoom out. And then we are going to group the layer we've just created, the shadow layer, and slice 4. Now when you want to move it around, make sure auto select up here is not checked. So if the group is selected, you can move it around. So now we can rename the group as slides 4, or in caps, just write S4. And let's go ahead and rearrange the slices. First, I'll begin with slice 1. Let's bring it down here. Press Ctrl T to transform and rotate. Turn it this way. Let's increase the size a bit and bring it to the corner. Hit the check sign or enter to accept. And then for the slice 4, the S4, we can just hit Ctrl T and reduce the size just a little bit. Bring it closer to the bottom half of the watermelon. Accept. And for slice 2, can move it up a little bit just like this. Hit Ctrl T to transform. Reduce the size further. And for slice 3, we can bring it up here, top left corner. Ctrl T to transform, and then we rotate it to something like this and reduce the size a bit. So for the first slice, let's add some depth to it by adding a blur. So a blur of say 15 is okay. Let's click OK. Let's add a little blur to slice 2 as well. Gaussian blur. But for that, we can add a blur radius of say 7. Let's add another asset that will highlight our product. So I'm going to add a sunburst. So let's increase the size. We're going to place this behind the product. So in your layers panel, let's make sure it goes behind the bottle. Now you can now change the blend mode to screen. And I want us to make a little changes to the background as well. From the dark green, let's brighten the green a bit. And for the sun ray layer, let's add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And let's adjust the handles to something like this. Now we need to add our text as well. So we create a layer just on top of the background, or in the background layer in the group on top of the background. And this is the font I'm going to use. So I'm just going to type in the word juice. and place it behind our product. And then I'll press Ctrl T to resize so that it lays some emphasis on our product. So after resizing it, let's select the text layer and position it beneath the gradient layer we created earlier on, like this. And let's pick this slice, that is slice 2, the slice 2 layer, and place it beneath the text layer. So I'm going to place a little shadow beneath the watermelon to give it an impression of a flower. So I'll pick my pen tool and create a new layer just beneath the watermelon bottom, or just on top of background. So that's the layer 4, and then make sure my foreground color is black, and then I draw something like this, like sort of a triangle. Make my selection and then fill it, shift backspace with the black. Next, I go into the blend mode and select soft light. Then I go into layer and change it into a smart object. And go into filter and let's select the normal Gaussian blur. Let's change the blur to say 180 and click OK. And come back to the opacity and let's reduce it to say 70. And let's add some depth to our text. So let's locate our text that's in the background group and add a drop shadow. And for the drop shadow, you can go with these settings with an angle of 90 and an opacity of say 60, a distance of 9 and a size of 50. And then you click OK. And after adding some finishing touches to our text, our promo design is complete. And we've come to the end of this Photoshop tutorial. Give it a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And on that note, I hope to see you in my next video. Until then, it's bye.